So a very good evening to one and all present here. Uh, we have started the masterclass for the batch of 22-24. So this is the first masterclass, and we were contemplating on how to start with the masterclass, and we boiled down to the fact that irrespective of specialization, irrespective of domain, something which is common and has been the talking point of all of this is how do we handle data, how do we derive decisions out of data. So we thought, okay, why not start off with the batch who is coming, and the future is this particular is data. And then we were trying to identify somebody who is best in that, and who can give uh, insights on what is data, how to handle data, and how to make informed decisions out of data. So we have with us Professor Kalyan, who is having immense experience, a very rich background in the industry. He has been handling supply chain functions of MNCs like Dell. He has been with association with HCL, and he currently is with IMT Hyderabad from almost close to 8 years. He is an associate professor in the area of operations. Coming to his educational background, he has done his graduation from NIT, then his post-graduation from IIM Ahmedabad, and his doctoral program from, again, one of the IIMs, IIM Lucknow. So it's a pleasure that we have Professor here, and he can share his experience as well as give you real-time examples of how industry has started taking or making decisions out of the data. I mean, because data-driven decisions as a fact has come out to be very effective. So without any further delay, I would like to hand over to Professor. So, and we start off with the session. Questions we will try to take up in the, at the end of the session. And I would request you can post your questions on the chat. We will pick up that and we'll try to answer all your queries on the kind of areas that you would like to have some more information. Over to you, Professor. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks a lot, Anirban. Thanks for that kind introduction. A small correction. Questions, I do encourage you to post right when it strikes your mind, and we will logically group them and pick them up during the presentation itself. We don't have to necessarily wait until the end. Having said that hygiene point, very warm welcome to this masterclass on demystifying data from IMT Hyderabad. All right, the topic is very close to my heart. I have been part of organizations' transformation exercises, which eventually resulted in these organizations become data-driven organizations than instinct-driven organizations. So, with no further ado, let me share my screen here with you. I have a small presentation which I'll share with you, and we will use that as a placeholder for our further discussion. Okay, can somebody in the team confirm that my screen is visible?
Yeah, we are able to see you. See this.
All right. Thank you. So once again, welcome to this masterclass on demystifying data. As Sherlock Holmes famously said, it's a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. All right. So while Sherlock Holmes is known for his deductive skills in detective crime detection kind of a setup, there is no reason as to why this saying is not relevant in an organizational context, not just organizational context, even in our personal lives. To the extent possible, it always is a good idea to have howsoever minimal data related to the problem, collect it, look at the data in an objective manner, and then take a decision. That is a safest and most objective way of approaching the problem. There are umpteen number of quotations on the subject that itself can probably take close to an hour. But there is one another quote that I'm sort of tempted to share with you, which goes something like, I'm not sure who said this, but it goes something like this. If you have data, then we will have a look at it. But if you have opinions, then we'll go with mine. All right. So that's another quote, which says a lot about the current decision making. People usually, instead of bringing data, bring their opinions, and it is the opinion versus opinion that sort of gets into your decision making. So that being the issue, let's see how a program at IMT Hyderabad will prepare you or will make you a better data-driven decision-making manager as against the instinct-driven decision-making manager. All right. So to that effect, I'm going to simply do a prep or warm-up of what you can hope to get in this entire 2 years, and sort of ignite the interest in the subject using this 1 hour that is available for me. All right. So I'm going to talk about, let me use a pointer. So I've already been introduced, so nothing much to add there. I just have a slide. I'll show it to you for half a minute and then move on. Then we'll talk about how data and decisions are related. What are they in the first place, and how are they related? Then the data industry itself. It's not my topic, as in it's a technology world as such. And it's exploding, all right. And India is at the forefront in this particular industry. So some of you are probably going to play an important role in this industry, and therefore let's talk briefly about this industry. Then we will quickly come into the organizational context. This is what is management is all about. Whichever area that you're going to choose, be it operations, marketing, finance, HR, whatever area that you're going to be specializing in that particular context, how does data get generated, how does it get processed, and how is it used in your decision making? We will try and look at it in an organizational context, and what kind of support systems exist for one to manage the data properly. Then we will move on to, there is a saying again that what you measure is something that you can manage. A corollary to that is, if you don't measure something, then you can't hope to really manage it well, right? So how do we measure the data, and at what level of aggregation do we measure, and how does it make sense for us in our decision making, is something that we will quickly touch upon. I'll talk through some applications, some well-known applications of data-driven decision making, and then lastly conclude my talk with what are those salient points at IMT Hyderabad 2-year PGDM program that will help you demystify the data. All right. So that being the case, this is quickly me. In all, totally 25 odd years of work experience, last 8 years of which has been in the academics, and largely operations, supply chain management, logistics, and technology related areas are what I have been teaching, business process management and things like that. Prior to that, I worked with a number of industries and companies such as Tata Motors, TCS, Dell, HCL Technologies, and so on and so forth, in different capacities, both in India and abroad. All through my life, I had largely been a supply chain management guy. And in terms of academics, I did engineering from NIT Jamshedpur, and once an MBA and CFA from ICFI Business School, followed by a second MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. And then most recently, last year itself, I had just completed my PhD from IIM Lucknow in the area of logistics. That's me. Let's jump into the topic, data and decisions, right? So at the most basic level, what is data, right? Data is basically, collection of facts and information. I mean, if this was a class, then I would have probably asked you all to tell the rest of the class as to what you think as data, or what examples can you give of data, and then that itself will make a lot of discussion points come up. In any case, this information is available in the form of numbers, words, measurements, observations, or descriptions. There are umpteen ways in which data can become available to us, and then using these pieces of information, whichever way it comes, one is supposed to. I mean, we don't collect data mindlessly, right? I mean, there is eventually, at least in an organizational context, there is a purpose behind doing this, and that purpose is to be able to take an effective decision so that we are more successful, right? So in order for us to make a decision, you can use the data collected as an evidence to make an informed decision, right? So this is a clear differentiator. Is the decision you're taking an informed one, or is it, you can toss a coin and then, heads I win, tails you lose, kind of a thing, right? Then let's understand what data is itself, right? So data is all through us, all around us, in the form of data, big data, cloud, and big data in the cloud. So I mean, you get the picture, right? So there is, I need data to be able to take informed decisions. But when I look at data, data is sort of, all around us. So, I mean, why is data-driven decision making a difficult thing, and why is it that we have to consciously make an effort in doing, getting there, is what I'm trying to get to. All right. So then, in that context, data-driven decision making, in its mouthful, so we can make it a short form. We can call it as D3M, right? So the process of making organizational decisions based on the analysis of actual information rather than intuition or observation is D3M. Okay, sounds good. In fact, why would anyone not want to take decisions, right? So let's see. I mean, there are again number of reasons. Again, I would probably pause in my classroom and let the class talk through as to give examples from their own lives as to how in friends, family, relatives have taken decisions without data, and why did they do it, etc., etc. But fundamentally, the concept is this, right? I mean, you have data, and using that, you should take decision. And what could possibly be easier, all right? However, in reality, there is a huge gap between the final decision and the actual collection of data itself. Data is available at sensors, in ERP systems, in the minds of the people, in files, and in sound bites, etc., etc. It is available all around us. And from there, for that data to get processed and travel to a stage where the relevant decision maker can look at the aggregate set of data in a meaningful manner and take a decision, it's a long journey. And during the course of this long journey, number of things happen. All right, number of untoward things happen, making people lose trust on, okay, I did all this data analysis and finally took a decision, and yet it turned out to be wrong. All right, there are a number of reasons, fundamentally because there are a number of things that could go wrong, and one needs to, I mean, if you are really creating a organization that is a data-driven organization, then you need to look at each and every interface here, and then make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. All right. So if you really see, the decision and processes are typically your business level activities, and the transactions and brokering of the information and reporting is typically handled using systems. And then reporting is again, you pre-code some kind of reports either on ERP systems or in Excel files, and or any other reporting software that one might have. and this is where your reporting happens. So this is where your data gets collected, goes through through various loops, and finally has to reach to an aggregated stage where one can take decisions, right? So point I'm trying to make here, without really getting into too much of details, is that there is a big gap between what I call as a cup and lip, right? So if this is the cup of data and this is a lip of decision, then there is a huge gap that data needs to cover, and good organization systems pay attention to this whole journey, make sure that data is available in a timely manner. What are the good qualities of data? I'll talk about it shortly, but this is the essence of this slide. So really, for data to make sense, right? This is how you could look at as the life of data, life cycle or life stages of data. So you see that these are uncolored ovals or circles that are here, which is data which doesn't make any sense to anybody. All right. So which, if you label it properly, if you categorize it properly, if you put in right systems, if you talk to the right set of people and do something with that mindless bunch of files or databases that you have, then it can get converted into what's called as information. It's actually represented as a pyramid, and that pyramid is called as a DIKW pyramid: data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. This is another representation of that. All right. So information is already, what was unlabeled, unknown, large chunks of data is already, is in some meaningful manner. Some information is there, but it is still, spread all around. I don't know what to make of it. The next stage is connecting these pieces through whatever, some functional connection, through process connection, through technology connection, or departmental connection, through customer connection. Your ability to link up these pieces of information in some kind of a coherent pattern is knowledge. And it is the knowledge, knowledge is a building block. That is the minimum that must exist within organizations for even to run. All right. Albeit it may not exist in systemic manner, but it certainly exists in the minds of the people. And this is how our brains work actually. All right. So we get the data, make it into information and convert it into knowledge. And finally, experts are those who convert that knowledge into insight. All right. And insight is, if this thing happens, this is what should happen, etc. That is where the expertise. So the difference from knowledge to expertise is the insight. And then finally, the guru. All right. So even beyond the expert is wisdom, which is really being able to connect completely unrelated happenings in the portions of the organization and be able to make a right prediction or give a right guidance. That's your wisdom. All right. And it's a maturity stage. Organizations need to move from here through here, and finally, if they do that, then they can hope to achieve bigger and better impact. But if you are at the knowledge level, your impact will probably be lesser, and it will keep increasing. Okay, so that's that is how your excuse me, data and decisions are linked to one another. All right. So how does data help you in making an organization richer, wiser, and therefore take objective, timely, meaningful decisions? Right. Let me pause for a second here. And Arindam, are there any questions? Observations?
Sir, as of now, there are no questions for this part. Till this part.
Okay. Does anyone want to ask a question? You can raise your hand and All right. Okay, I'll then move on. Stop me if any of you want to ask a question or something like that. Okay. Yeah. So is someone making a mark here? This is so I have a couple of slides on the data industry. Devansh, do you want to ask me something? All right. So we often come across this term called big data landscape. Now, this is related and unrelated to the topic here, as in, fundamentally demystifying data implies that there is certainly a large amount of data that is available because of various reasons. And how do we demystify that data, right? Yet at the same time, I want to, instead of going on the technology side, where all these big data and related softwares and hardware that are being built, I want to stay focused on the managerial side of it, which is data driven decision making. Yet at the same time, it is improper for us not to talk about the technological landscape that is present in the world of big data. So at the infrastructure level, quite a few of us must have heard AWS, Amazon Web Services, and few other players. Then storage available typically in a cloud format, because it doesn't sort of make sense for any organizations to store humongous amounts of data that is not necessarily exclusively belonging to them, in the sense that social media data could be held by some cloud entity, and I as a user could just pick that data. And big data processing and management is again you have this Greenplum, AWS, Hadoop, and other players. And finally, on the analytics and data set, you have ClickFox, Splunk here on the analytics, and Google provides a lot of big data sets and things like that. Okay, and this is not even probably 1% of the whole set of the ecosystem that exists, and number of entrepreneurs have also in the recent past started a number of organizations in the big data front. Why do we big data itself? I mean, if we need to. If we are asked as to what's big data, I mean, why are we calling it as big data, and how is it different from data, right? So obviously the phrase itself, big, right? So in terms of volume, it is pretty large. That's the reason why it's called big. Apart from that, one of the most famously used definition for big data is 4 V's. All right. So volume I just talked about, variety, veracity. Variety is the types of data, right? So you have songs, you have pictures, you have videos, you have files, and you have scanned images, and so on. So there are all kinds of data types that are present, and that makes it as variety is high in a typical RDBMS, that is relational database system. You do not have all kinds of data types. You usually have a transactional data type which is converted into bits and bytes, and that's all that you have. Whereas in big data, that's not. You can store memes, and you can any kind of files, right? So volume, variety, veracity is the accuracy of the data, and fourth is velocity. The fourth property of big data is that it changes very, very rapidly. All right, there are you go onto the internet, you will see number of pictures out there that talk about every 1 internet minute how many how much of data gets added in terms of personal files, pictures, songs, videos, and so on and so forth. on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and etc. Right? So therefore, velocity is pretty high, and all these four properties put together makes it as big data. All right. Now, coming back to what are the sources of this explosion of data? Social interactions which were not, prior to the internet, hardly there, have contributed largely. And then human files, we tend to put a lot of pictures and images on the internet and that and videos, and that contributes to a huge amount of data. So these are the two sources of explosion of data, really. And transactional data itself, that is, the business transactions, buying, selling, purchasing, quality checking, payments, and all that, which are typical business transactions, really, in relation, if you see, barely has increased. All right, they stay as it is. But then, okay, why are we talking this data-driven decision making? Because out here, most of the company's customers sit, all right, and through these interactions, I mean, one of the, I'm probably jumping here, but one of the reasons why companies wants to harness this data is because this data tells companies a lot about its customers. What are their tastes, preferences, and what do they like, dislike, at what points of life stages they are, etc. And that's a huge, rich source of information for organizations to do a targeted sales, right? So that's the reason why this data also becomes relevant in our data-driven decision making. Lastly, one another big source for this data explosion is, some of you may have heard this phrase called fourth industrial revolution, right? So, or in short called Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 is basically nothing but, among other technologies, one of the most important technology is Internet of Things, where most of the devices that we see around did not have any internet, or in other words, any communication with other things or with us as users. But that is changed in the recent past. Now, a number of devices that we have around in our homes or in our possession are connected to the internet, and when they're connected to the internet, in other words, they can communicate, and when they can communicate, they can share information. This may, you have all these smart homes and things like that itself generate data, but this is at the consumer side. Let's go to the industry side. We have machines, right? I mean, huge number of machines producing, again, huge number of equipment. All these machines are also internet enabled, and there are sensors that are put in place which keep throwing out the temperature data, the volume data, the frequency data, the disturbance data, the volume of lubricant. I mean, you name it. I mean, the entire health of the machine is self-captured in the sensors that are kept, and that is pushed through the internet to the servers, and whosoever is the supervisor in charge for the production shop floor will, on his mobile itself, will keep getting on a frequent basis what's the health of various equipment that exists. All this is also data that is helping people take very relevant decisions, right? So this is on the technology front as to what causes so much of data, relevant data, become available. And I say relevant with a bit of caution, because not many organizations have been able to successfully make the data relevant for them. And it is in fact those organizations that could make it relevant for them are the ones that have exceeded in performance vis-a-vis many others. Okay, so that sort of concludes the second module, and I'll now move on to the organizational context in which how data is produced and how data is consumed is what I'll talk about. Okay, before I do that, questions. Any questions, Anirban?
Questions on the chat if you have anything on this particular module before sir moves on to the next module. You can just write to us on the chat. We'll take it up from there on.
Okay, so Himanshu is posted a question under big data analytics. Can expedient decisions be taken, or is it always slow decision making? Do we use AI in that aspect as well? In fact, the whole point of using technology based decision making is to be able to take quicker decisions. So in fact, a slow decision is a no decision. I mean, there is if the opportunity, the window of opportunity crosses, then even if you take a decision that may not yield the expected results. Having said that, there is unless your your platform is designed and executed such that it is as close as possible to the reality, then you can trust your data, you can trust your algorithm, and therefore you can trust the decision it makes. More often than not, it is very difficult. I mean, this is a very utopian statement that I made. In the best of the organization, there are always challenges in the data, always challenges in the algorithm. So nobody lets AI or otherwise, nobody lets machines take decisions and then let go. All right. There is always some kind of a human intervention that verifies whether this is a good enough decision or not, and that also contributes to some amount of delay in final decision making. And it's rightfully so. I mean, probably, and then it gets into a different domain, which is ethics and AI and all that, which I don't want to get to. But net, I mean, my answer to this question would be your big data analytics. The intention behind them is to help you take expedient decisions. I hope I answered your question, Himanshu. All right. So next question here is, diversified data, right? So diversified data is exactly one of the properties of big data, right? So if you recall, I said one of the V's is a variety, right? So the big data platforms are designed such that they can read, understand, and process data of multiple formats, and then synthesize that pieces of information. Your visual recognition, the expression on the face, combined with some kind of a text or sentiment analytics, combined with some social media posting, how wide or various it can be, but then you have analytic platforms that can synthesize all these pieces of information and make a recommendation, product recommendation or otherwise, for product recommendation, and that's a good use of analytics. Okay, then the next question here. All right, Tanuma is asking, is it always the case that our available facts and figures drive our decision, or sometimes we have to fix a particular stage where we want to reach and when analyze our facts and figures? This is a very, very philosophical question, Tanumai. There are arguments on both sides. I very clearly know where you're coming from. If, especially with respect to human aspirations and ambitions and goals, if I have to reach somewhere, I have to reach somewhere. I mean, what is there to look at facts and figures for? All right. So that is always there. However, the looking at of facts and figures should be to figure out what your next step should be. All right. Usually, the decision that you're talking about, or where you want to reach in the long run, 10 years down the line, 20, it can be individual or it can be organizational. I want to be market leader, all right, which is good enough, all right. So so that is not truly a decision that is creating a goal for myself. However, a decision is a more shorter term in the nature. What should I do next? If my competition is doing this, then what should be my move? If my customers are, changing in demography, what should I do next? If weather patterns are changing, what should I do? What changes should I make to my product design and things like that? These are what I am referring to as decision. So for those decisions, facts and figures should drive, but this fixing of particular stage is more in the long run. That is, ambition driven. All right. Last question, Daya Prasad is asking, as being completely unaware of how this industry works, can you please give an example of a real life example of a data analytic project? It would help in broad idea about the industry. So surely, Daya Prasad, my last section is about some case studies. I hope to give some examples there. Okay. Can we move on? So in the organizational context, firstly, we keep saying data, but then data is supposed to have some essential qualities to it for it to be usable, right? So some of you probably are familiar with this phrase called GIGO, which basically stands for garbage in, garbage out. All right. So if the data that your organization is collecting is a garbage, then howsoever great, sophisticated algorithms you make the data pass through, the output will still be garbage. All right. So please make sure that the input data is quality-wise good, and it is accessible to right people, and data is complete in its totality, and it is available in a timely manner, not 1 quarter down the line, and then you don't overload people with data just because you're becoming a data-driven organization. So typical representation of a business can be like, this is in the form of a pyramid. You will see in most of your MBA first year programs, first year courses, that organization is represented like this, which is your strategic management, tactical and operational management, and at the bottom level is transactional level. All right. And organizations use resources through their various functions such as marketing, HR, and production, and convert into products and services. And who are the people that work with organizations? Employees, managers, government, customers, financial institutions, colleges, media, and so on and so forth. So this is, you can think of this as one bird's eye view of how an organization runs. And what does it do on ongoing basis? It plans for things, it organizes resources, it makes sure that right resources are led in a right way, and then right control mechanisms are put in place. So that is okay. For those of you with no working background, that slide should sort of help you in getting some view about how organizations are run. Having said that, there are very many people working at various layers, and each of them need to take decisions using the right type of data. All right. So the decision taken by a CEO, for example, is not necessarily the kind of decision that is taken by, let's say, a purchase manager, right? So therefore, your design of data systems in your organization should be such that it should keep getting aggregated, and the right level of information is available to the right layer of management. For example, most clerical level roles involve processing of transactions. I receive a invoice, I make entry of that invoice, and then send it to my finance department, who will process the invoice, make the payment. So there is really very well set routine kind of activities that need to be done. So what are the payment terms? If the invoice amount is more than $5,000, then it should be paid within 30 days. If it is less than $5,000, then it should be paid within a week. Now that also is a decision, and at a clerical level, that's a decision that is taken. All right. Likewise, operational level is slightly at a higher level, which is about if something is not going as per the original process, it's called an exception, and it's called an exceptional handling. Tactical level is at a slightly senior level, and these people look at future. All right. So if you really look at these two levels, these two are at best present or most likely based on past. Right. The business transaction has already occurred, and I am handling some closing the loop kind of a system. What if reports is about the future, right? So if we do this, what will happen? If we do that, what will happen, etc. Right? Strategic level is further down. I mean, I will combine not just my own organizational data, but I will look at what else is happening around me in the industry, in the country, in the economy, and how would that affect my decisions, right? So that is at the strategic level. Point is this: each of these guys use data, but at different levels. So no one size fits all. And as a manager, to be manager, you need to understand what are the data or information requirements at different levels and design systems accordingly. All right? And that's how organizations sort of generate data. This is another view. All right. So you have these departments running or responsible for various business processes, which are handled by different functions. And finally, each business process is supposed to serve a customer. And through this particular day in, day out transactions, data gets accumulated. All right. So within 1 week, I would have probably handled 5,000 orders. And if I just stack them up, then it's a pretty big set of data. So each transaction is probably looked at by the clerical level. All right. 1 week level data is probably looked at by the operational level, and 1 month data is looked at by the tactical level, and 1 year or half a year data is looked by the strategic level. All right. So that is volume stacking. You could also look at time stacking. You could also look at geography stacking, and so it's all various ways of aggregating the data so that right set is available for right managers. Okay, so that's how, in an organizational context, data gets generated, processed, and used by different people. Okay. So what I gave you at the organization level is at an abstract level as to what kind of layers exist and what kind of decisions they take. Okay. Now let's talk briefly about the measurement itself, right? So what you can measure is something that you can manage, right? So if you refer back to some of the slides that I spoke to you about, at first your data gets accumulated in the form of transactions, and the transactional data over a certain period of time, over certain volume, is captured in the form of what is called as performance metrics. And the trend of this performance metrics, is it increasing, decreasing, staying stationary, etc. The lead time for processing invoices. All right. So if the benchmark that I have is 14 days, and if my average, my trend is that it's averaging at 14 days, then my process is performing all right. But if it is gradually increasing over last, I don't know, maybe a quarter or so, from 14 to 15 to 16 to 17 days, then there is something wrong that's happening in my process that requires me to go and do some kind of a root cause analysis, and that is management, right? So if it is working at the level that is desired, then you don't need to intervene. At the transaction level, it is running all right. As a manager, you don't need to sort of intervene. So data, so fundamentally, when data itself gets converted into metrics, which further gets improved, or more information gets added and gets converted into analytics. Okay, so taking an example from human resources, talent metrics, for example, measure tangible data such as your headcount, attrition, and compensation. And what would talent analytics measure? It would provide strategic talent insight and are designed to measure intangibles in a future-focused manner to predict possible outcomes. In fact, one of the people analytics case study that we have of Google actually used talent analytics or people analytics to their advantage, so that they have been able to retain their better performing lot at a higher percentage. We will talk about it shortly. All right, so this is your data, metrics, and analytics. Fundamentally, the difference between metrics and analytics is this, that you can't have actionable analytics without well-designed metrics. In other words, metrics is the foundation, building block on which analytics gets built. Okay, so put differently, metrics drive analytics, which drive insights, which further drive better informed decisions, and finally optimized outcomes. All right, so optimized is maximizing my goal, whatever that it is. I want to maximize my revenues or my profits or things like that. Okay, so let's keep that metrics and measurement management aside, because that we are taking as a given. All right, and this at least this 1 hour that I have with me, I'm using more to entice you in terms of what kind of decisions can data help you take, and which is usually referred to as analytics also. So we are drawing from analytics as much as possible. So what kind of questions does a well-designed analytics system or decision-making system answer, right? So that is what we will try to answer in this particular slide. What made this possible is undoubtedly the increasing, fast increasing processing power and storage power of computers. This is a singular reason as to not only availability of data, but also the processing of the data in a meaningful manner. Some of the examples are, determining credit risk, developing new medicines, all the so-called COVID vaccine creation. One of the reasons for rather rapid vaccine development. I mean, otherwise it normally takes anywhere from 7 to 10 years for developing a vaccine for any epidemic. But thanks to technology, thanks to, of course, other regulatory support system also, we've been able to get a vaccine within 2 years, not even 1.5 years at the outbreak of the so-called pandemic, right? So and other things such as efficient ways to deliver products and services. Ever wondered how would your Amazon deliveries are grouped in such a way that you keep getting your products exactly within whatever promised delivery window. All right, there is a lot of analytics that are running at the background. Preventing fraud, Amazon uses a lot of fraud prevention analytics. Likewise, a number of financial institutions also use fraud prevention analytics. Okay, and cyber threats, etc., etc. You don't simply use instinct, you should use data anyway. So all that is all right, but what kind of questions are we looking at? So I like to give this analogy of trying to drive a car. All right, so when you are driving a car, you have both rear view mirror as well, not just one rear view mirror, 3 rear view mirrors, right? So on right and left and as well at the center, right? And then you also have a large windshield through which you can look forward. Now, if I tell you to drive the car without looking at the rear view mirror, all right, will you be able to do it effectively? All right, you may probably for a short while, but then you need to be able to look at the rear view mirror on a time and again basis. Also, at the same time, you also need to constantly look at the your so-called windshield also as to what is coming ahead of you. All right, so you should, equating driving the car to running an organization, your descriptive analytics that look at the past are like looking at the rear view mirror. And what are the questions we are looking at that descriptive analytics answer is what happened, how or why did it happen, and what's happening now. All right. So these three questions are all quite in the realm of what's called as descriptive analytics. Having known or having collected data about whatever, what happened, how did it happen, etc., I can build on it and do some kind of a prediction and answer the question that is what's likely to happen next. Okay. And going further down, given that this is what is going to happen, and given that this is what is my forecast about the rest of the environment, what's the ideal action for me? All right. And that's your prescriptive analytics. Fundamentally, there are three types of analytics: descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive. Okay. This itself has evolved over past few years. Earlier, it was more about sense and respond. That is, limited maximum to your so-called predictive analytics. Sensing is looking at the rear view mirror. All right. And when you look at the rear view mirror, you get answers like how did it happen, why did it happen, etc. And knowing that why did it happen, I can take some kind of a responsive action. That is, starting from raw data to clean data. Recall my picture about, raw data is that uncolored ovals, and then cleaned up data is, information. Standard reports are some patterns that get established, which is like knowledge, and then, it sort of jumps and moves forward, right? So now generic predictive models gave way to predictive modeling, which further gave way to your optimization, and optimization is your prescriptive kind of analytics. And things are happening rather rapidly. There are much more advances that are working out on that front. There are a lot of technologies, underlying technologies that make this possible. One of the, without really getting into the details, one of the most foundational technology that help organizations to do effective prediction is what's called as data mining. Data mining is fundamentally, there are a number of sub techniques within that. The idea behind data mining is knowledge discovery in databases. So just as the word mining implies that if it is a iron ore or gold ore or whatever, people have to dig through a lot of dirt to be able to get to that particular metal of interest. All right. So that similarly, if you need to mine, you need to dig through a lot of data to be able to. I'm not saying data is dirt, but then for the context, in the context you're looking at, you need to dig through a lot of data to be able to find those nuggets of intelligence. Okay, there is a lot more that can be said about data mining. There are courses at IIT Hyderabad. You can get deeper on data mining also, and of course there are some Coursera courses also. Okay. Pausing for a second to see if there are any questions. Any questions, friends?
I'm not able to see any. I hope we have taken this question, sir, from Abdul. Are these primary sources of data? That one we have taken up.
Where is this? Where is this? No, I didn't. I'm not seeing that question. Can you read it for me?
Abdul is asking, are these primary sources of data? Apart from this, are there other ways to extract? That's the question.
Okay.
But it was meant for some slide which we have covered. I feel so, sir.
Yes. For some reason, I did not see this question. Perhaps the set that I'm seeing is different. So yeah, to answer your question, I will go back to that slide, Abdul, and show that to you, so that this one. So if you see, this consists of all types of data. So when we say primary data, what we really basically mean is that at the happening of the transaction, if I am taking data, that's called as primary data, correct? So sometimes in a research kind of a context, primary data is, if people's behavior is what I am studying, then I go to a sample set of people and ask them some questions and collect data. That also is called as primary data. So fundamentally, if the object of interest, I'm collecting the data straight from the object of interest, it's called as primary data. And if I'm collecting the information from not that source, but some other source, such as, previously done research, or, some kind of other reports that are published by other agencies, governments or people like that. If I'm using that piece of information, then that's called as secondary data. Big data, or for that matter, the data that we are talking about here, does consider both of these types of data in our decision making. I hope I answered that question. Abdul, if there is anything more, you can still post. That is the answer to your question. Supratim, data cleansing, there are number of technologies available. Okay, so people have created algorithms, and you can customize those algorithms to be able to look at what is required in your data files. All right. So it's quite actually a technical subject, and there are technical solutions available for separating, or for identifying missing data, or identifying the data that doesn't look like accurate data, and point it out to you. Okay. So short answer, there are technical solutions available and not very difficult to learn. Okay, so once again, some of the analytics courses at IMT Hyderabad do cover this particular topic also, that is data cleansing. So let me move to where I was. Applications, right? So these are some of the questions that we can answer using data-driven systems. How much we should charge for a particular item. All right. So one might think that it is a very straightforward question. I'll either look at my cost and add my margin, or I will look at what my competitor is offering and then probably price it slightly low and then be done with it. Pricing is a lot more to that than a simple answer as that. It has got linkages to your brand image, it has got your linkages to your profitability, it has got linkages to your earnings per share, etc., etc., etc. All this gets in your MBA you will learn all that. And then use the right set of analytics, or ask for the right set of data, so that you can link up how does a decision taken in the marketing affect the finance, affect the operations, affect the HR. Okay, so likewise other questions such as new manufacturing plant, who gets our latest brochure, what interest rate should customer receive, why are we losing some customers, and some other examples. So popularly, these applications are called as customer analytics, HR analytics, business productivity analytics, sales analytics, supply chain analytics, or behavioral analytics, and then there are many more like this. Okay, so we do have at least about half a dozen at IMT Hyderabad, half a dozen domain-specific analytics courses, including your supply chain analytics, customer analytics, and HR analytics. All right, including these, we have risk analytics is another area that are offered at IMT. Okay, so these are some case studies. I'll just this website, you are welcome to go to this website and look at them. Also, and there are some hyperlinks. If you need more details, you can read through that also. So Netflix is one. Where am I? Yeah. So one of the first example is, Netflix is known to create. I'm sure some of you are Netflix users here, and you sure have experience as to how Netflix pushes based on your movie watching pattern. It pushes recommendations to you that seems to be exactly what the kind of genre that you enjoy. All right. So this kind of a very algorithmic or data driven kind of marketing has substantially increased its revenue, right? So analyzing over 30 million plays a day, as well as over 4 million subscriber ratings and 3 million searches, right? So they created series. I think they have created series that can be customized to different viewing patterns. The second example is that of Google, which used or studied the performance measurement data of its 80,000 plus employees over last few years to see how does or what are the traits of good performers versus not so good performers, and then especially of within them the ones who are leaving. All right. So based on that, they could figure out that there are these traits or attributes. Remember, they're using analytics not simply in number crunching, but it is based on text analytics and stuff like that. They've been able to unearth some of the attributes that the high performers seem to have, and then they created training programs which has sort of reduced their attrition rate into half, and especially of that of good performers. Coca-Cola using ads more effectively. Digital marketing dollars are notoriously wasted, right? The extent of conversion is substantially low in digital marketing because it's like an ocean. Are we really targeting, and what is the conversion rates on it? So Coca-Cola has done some serious analytics on its marketing data to be able to get a much higher payoff for their digital marketing. Likewise, DBS Deutsche Bank has also done some customer analytics to make very customized offerings, financial, personal loans or credit cards and things like that. Uber, we all know, giving a much more efficient ride with data, combining the riding patterns, their driver availability, vehicles, type of vehicles, etc. We know that back at home, Ola, otherwise Uber, have a very, very powerful analytics platform that can really help us get the vehicles at the snap of our finger, and then take us in as much efficient manner as possible. And they have mechanisms to actually do surge pricing and things like that, so that customers can quickly change their demand patterns, so that most needy ones, people who can pay because their need is more important, go ahead and do that. All right. So these are some examples that that you can look up. There are many, many more such examples. Point is that you need to be consciously looking at what kind of data that is available around me within my organization, and where do I want. Don't mindlessly put up our data analytics project in your organization because that's the hep thing to do. Everyone else is doing, so I will do. That will be like putting the cart before the horses. You need to know where you want to go to. Like Tanumay has asked, you need to have your philosophy clear, and once having the philosophy, then figure out the right set of analytics tools that are relevant for you. Lastly, how would PGDM at IMTH help you demystify the data? There are a number of reasons, but these are some very, very quick pointers. The first year is going to give you the domain knowledge. All right. So without the domain knowledge, if you're taught some really powerful machine learning, Python and other kind of algorithms, it's like, placing a, I don't know, maybe poor analogy, but placing a, very powerful power tool in the hands of a little boy. All right. So the boy, he will simply switch it on, switch it off, but then doesn't know the power of it, and could end up actually misusing it, right? So therefore, having the right domain knowledge is very essential, and the first year you will be exposed to that domain knowledge, and then followed by that also the analytics or the decision making that you will be exposed to is always domain centered. All right, so it will be either finance or marketing or supply chain or customers analytics and things like that. So you are always looking at what decision I'm talking about, what kind of data is relevant for me, and what kind of tools that I will use. All right, subjects in decision making in all the terms, right? So it's not like you are taught about it in first or second terms and then that's it. Throughout, all the way till your sixth term, there are subjects on decision making. And case-based pedagogy, because of the application-oriented learning, you will, okay, I mean, this fantastic sounding algorithm is good to know, but does anyone use it? So case-based ensures that you are exposed to companies that are using some methods, and finally equip you with a lot of tools. Every at least decision-making kind of an elective will expose you to a number of tools. So you will have a bag full of tools, and also with with a caveat of which tool is relevant in which context, so that when you leave the program, you will know which tool to use depending on which situation that you're going to be facing. Right? So that's it from me. Thank you for patiently listening out to this session. I have overshot by 7 minutes, but I'm still happy to take questions if any of you got any questions. Else, back to you, Anirban.
Yeah, if you have any questions, kindly share with us. We'll be happy to take it up, or else we'll call it a day. We'll wind up the session. Let us know if you have any questions.
On the chat window, are there questions? Last I see, at least, is from Supratim. How is the raw data cleansed? I talked through that. If in your window, if you see any other questions.
No, in my window, no. Karthik, if you can check if in the CSC, I mean, if they have posted any question, do you have it? If you can share, you can just check in your window. If you have any, Karthik.
Have you asked Daya Prasad question? I have posted to you in the
you can post the question to Kalyan, sir. I mean, you can.
Daya Prasad, I have answered. Yeah.
Okay.
Daya Prasad asked, as being completely unaware. So basically,
Yes,
give a real life example. I talked about those 6 case studies very quickly. I hope it has helped.
So then, sir, I don't see there are any further questions, and I hope we can close it, sir.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you all once again for being with us. I hope you found the session interesting and there are useful takeaways for you from this course. Looking forward to seeing you all at IMPH.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for being with us, sharing your insights. I'm sure this particular session, as a first session of the masterclass, will really help them in taking things forward, understanding how data operates. And when we now move on to a specific masterclass in terms of finance, marketing, HR, operations and all, they'll be able to relate how data is integrated with all the other management functions.
Okay, sure.
Wish you all the best, students. Right. Thank you for attending this session. We will keep you informed on the next masterclasses and the workshops which we are going to conduct for all of you. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Good night. Bye-bye. Thanks, Karthik, for being with us and helping us on the IT part. Thank you, Karthik.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.